What is up, everybody? This is JP, your online personal trainer. First things first, I really do appreciate everybody's patience with me and this channel and my frequency of uploads. I have been going through a lot of stuff the last few months, and from here on out, I will have a much higher frequency of uploads, but I'd rather just show you instead of tell you. So again, just be looking out for more videos coming up. Today's video is going to be about training to failure. This is a pretty big topic, and depending on who you ask, it is necessary to make gains in the gym or it is not required. And I feel like the least popular answer is that it is not required to make gains in strength or hypertrophy. And I'm going to explain to you why today, why training to failure is, and this is not a clickbait title, and I don't even know what I'm going to title the video yet, but it is not going to be a clickbait title, and how training to failure is hurting your gains in strength and hypertrophy. Now, there is a time and place to train to failure, which I will get in on the next video, but right now I'm going to explain why, for the most part, training to failure is not good for gaining muscle and it's not good for gaining strength. All right, let's start with what training to failure means for, maybe you don't know, but it's pretty obvious. It's basically doing a set, doing as many repetitions as you can until you cannot do any more repetitions. And some people do this every single set. Some people do this most of their sets, and then they usually do this because they think it's a good idea, because someone on YouTube said it, or because they heard friends say it, or they read it in a magazine. And this is a very attractive way to train because it promotes, I don't want to say ego, but it makes you, oh, I'm gonna bust my ass in the gym and then I'm gonna make all these gains, which I don't necessarily think. When you look at the scientific literature, that doesn't correlate to making gains in strength or hypertrophy. But again, it's twofold. It's an attractive way to train, and they hear someone else say it, which is why they do it. But let's start with strength, okay? Let's start with explaining what they both are. Well, what makes up strength? There's three things that you can control. There are a lot of things that make up strength, but there are three things that you can control that make up strength. The three are skill acquisition, neurological adaptation, and muscle mass. Okay, now there's one major thing that makes up hypertrophy. It's total workout volume. It's basically how much you do in the gym. That is the primary driver for hypertrophy. There is no other independent factor that promotes gains in muscle mass. It is volume. Some people say it's if you lift heavy, you get bigger. No, that is not the case. It is just total workout volume is the key driver for hypertrophy. So when you train to failure, what do? You basically take a set to failure. You do as many repetitions as you can until you cannot do any more. Now, for anyone who has done this, and maybe you watching this video has done this, let's just say you have an exercise of back squats and you have 225 on the bar, and you can do that for 12 reps, and 12 reps is failure for you with good form. And I know this, that in subsequent sets 2, 3, and 4, if you went to failure on the first set, on sets 2, 3, and 4, you're not going to get as many repetitions. 2, you're probably not going to get as many repetitions, but you're also going to have to probably decrease your load. And that's if you truly go to failure, unless you take an abnormally long rest period. But even then, going to failure, it usually forces you to reduce load on subsequent sets, and it also forces you to reduce repetitions. Now, when you reduce load and you reduce repetitions, you are now decreasing total work volume for that workout and then throughout the whole week. So when you train to failure, you are now decreasing volume, which is going to reduce gains over time. Because again, volume is the key driver for hypertrophy. It's not even a debate. Scientific literature is extremely clear on that. If you guys want, it's very easy to look up, but if you guys don't believe me and you want a link to these studies, just let me know in the comments below. Now, we'll stick with hypertrophy and then we'll move on to how this affects strength negatively. But again, so when you take sets to failure, you cannot do as many reps in subsequent sets, and you also probably have to decrease load. Again, anyone who's trained actual to failure in sets know that you can't do the same reps in subsequent sets. Now, what does this also do? When the first check mark right here is what I just said. The second check mark, it says increased fatigue. Now, when you go to failure on every single set, you now have increased total fatigue, which means that in subsequent workouts throughout the week, you are now going to be dealing with this extra fatigue from going to failure on every single set, which again, in turn, is going to decrease total work volume. If you are extremely sore from the day before or 2 days before because you went to failure on every single set, and you have DOMs like just horribly, like it hurts to walk, it hurts to sit. I mean, anyone who's worked out hard knows what that feels like. You're not going to be able to get as many reps in for that next workout. So again, in a different way, you're now decreasing total work volume. And another kind of indirect way that you could decrease total work volume by training to failure is getting injured. And if you get injured, guess what? You can't work out at all. You're going to have decreased, and even if it's not a serious injury, you're going to have decreased reps, and you're just not going to be able to do as much in the gym, which again is decreased work volume. Now, if you stop a few reps short of failure, like maybe about a 5 to 7 RPE, and I'll explain RPE in my next video when I talk about when it's maybe good to train to failure sometimes, or not. I wouldn't say good, well, yeah, good, I guess, but I'll talk about that on my next video. But if you train to about a 5 to 7 RPE, which is about 5 to 3 reps from failure, you stop the set, that is more optimal, because one, you're not going to have to decrease load per subsequent sets of that same exercise, or decrease repetitions. Hopefully you don't have to do both. You're not going to have to deal with this increased fatigue for subsequent workouts throughout the week. And then you're also going to have a decreased chance for injuries, which is all good. Now, that's for hypertrophy. That's for gaining muscle mass. That's how training to failure negatively affects that. Well, how does training to failure negatively affect strength gains? Well, like I said earlier, the 3 things that you can control that affect strength are skill acquisition, getting skilled, and let's just use squat as an example still. Is getting skilled in the squat. You do the squat more, you get a better setup, better technique, you get better at the squat. The second thing would be neurological adaptation. You could be skilled in a squat, but not train in the proper rep ranges and proper percentage of 1 rep max. That, yeah, you're skilled in the squat, but because you never train heavy, let's just say you never go below 20 reps, you're still probably not going to have a really good 1 rep max. So that's where neurological adaptation comes in. And the third thing would be muscle mass, which is, muscular hypertrophy. So if in a weird way, well, not in a weird way, in a very direct way, when you train to failure, it affects hypertrophy, but that also affects strength, because over time, you're going to be leaving gains on the table, and you're not going to be as jacked. And with all else held equal, let's just say you have 2 lifters exactly the same. They both have the same skill on the squat. They both train heavy, but one has more muscle mass. The one that has more muscle mass is going to be the stronger person, if all else is equal. But for strength too, training to failure also has other negative consequences besides just muscle mass being affected. It's skill acquisition. When you train to failure, especially when you get really close to failure, things start to falter, your form starts to falter, your velocity on the concentric portion of the repetition start to falter. You just have bad and poor mechanics. This is a different topic, and I already did a video on this, but this is exactly why people don't necessarily agree with CrossFit, is because when you do these heavy compound movements really fast, it messes with skill acquisition and then increases injury risk. But again, so when you train to failure, I don't care what you say. If you train to failure consistently, I guarantee you, if you took a video of your first 3 reps to your middle 3 reps, or the 3 reps before failure, not close to failure, and then you took your 3 reps right before failure, like the last 3 reps you did, the last 3 reps are going to start looking sloppy, especially if you truly go to failure. So again, you're going to start picking up poor habits, which is going to affect your strength in the long run. Neurological adaptation. Again, if you just consistently train to failure, especially with strength, and you're training heavy at the same time, that is just a recipe for overtraining in the long run, and then that leads to a whole host of problems. I did a video on that too. And again, just look up what overtraining symptoms, and you're going to get a lot of symptoms that are going to come up that aren't good. Depression, loss of appetite, can't sleep, loss of muscle mass, irritability, things like that. And another thing too with strength is that you're lifting heavier than hypertrophy. Hypertrophy is a stimulus that you can see from a variety of rep ranges, strength is a skill. So if you're training to failure with heavy weights, you have an increased chance of injury risk here, but it's a lot greater with strength training, and especially with heavy weights. That's just asking for a huge injury. So again, those are the reasons why training to failure is not good most of the time. You should not be training to failure because of total decreased work volume for the day and the entire week when you train to failure. If you're actually training to failure, you're not going to be able to do the same reps each set, and you're not going to be able to do the same weights each set. And then on top of that, increased injury risk, and then on top of that, more overall global fatigue, which again is going to affect subsequent workouts. In my next video, I'm going to go over when it's good to train to failure, and then it's kind of when it's good, but kind of when it's just okay to train to failure. But there are some instances where training to failure can be good, and I'll talk about that on my next video. Again, thank you guys for your patience. If you have any questions, comments, put them down in the video below. But until then, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.